Over the past 6 months, Jeanie Ward-Waller has become something of a celebrity in the small world of California transportation politics. Last summer, she began speaking up to her superiors at Caltrans about the planned widening of Interstate 80. She suspected Caltrans was being dishonest about the project's future impacts on air pollution and climate change, which the agency denies. She even called for an outside audit to assess whether Caltrans was breaking the law. Shortly thereafter, she was fired. Ward-Waller says there are good people working at Caltrans, but that the agency's leadership often has a mindless impulse to widen freeways.
There's still a long way to go for Caltrans to really shift away from feeling like driving is the only option and the only solution is continuing to expand our freeways, to focusing on providing alternatives for people so they have safer and more sustainable ways to get around their communities.
California has set a goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. That means in about 20 years, every molecule of carbon dioxide that Californians put into the atmosphere would somehow have to be recaptured and returned to the Earth. Ward-Waller says it's a good goal. It's based on what scientists say is necessary to avoid climate catastrophe, but she acknowledges it's going to be hard.
The solutions are many, are varied. They include things like building more affordable housing in existing communities so people can live close to where they work, live, in neighborhoods where there's already infrastructure, like things like sidewalks, public transit. The more we build new communities farther away, the more we're working against those goals. But certainly how we invest in our transportation infrastructure has a lot of influence on how those development patterns happen and change. The more we are expanding freeways, the more we're making it easier for people to drive farther, to afford homes farther away from those existing communities. So that's really working against our goals of getting to net zero carbon emissions.
I point out to Ward-Waller that while Californians care about climate change, economic issues like inflation and the cost of housing are usually higher priorities. She says all these things are connected.
Well, California is already being impacted, every day, every year we see worse and worse disasters like wildfires, like, sea level rise, major storms, drought. Those impacts are worsening because of climate change every year. So these things do impact people's everyday lives. And I think they most impact the communities that kind of have the least resources to do anything about it. So the communities that are already divided by freeways, already most impacted by air pollution from freeways, those are going to be the communities that are most impacted by things like severe heat as well and the effects of climate change. So we all need to be engaged in changing the system and changing how we get around and ensuring that our governments are providing better options to get around to make sure that those who are most burdened today do not continue to be the most burdened in the future.
Ward-Waller adds the transition away from a car-centric society is a pocketbook issue. Most people have to own a car just to participate in the economy, and like almost everything these days, car ownership is getting more expensive.
I mean, the amount of money that goes towards our gas taxes to then maintain the system that we all rely on, even if you mostly drive and you can get everywhere in a car easily today, you know that the system is not well maintained. You care about things like filling potholes, keeping the system that you rely on for driving in a state of good repair. And so that is a kind of pocketbook issue that affects people every day. The more we expand that system, the less we have the ability to maintain what we have. And that's going to impact everyone. And it certainly impacts, how we spend our taxpayer dollars.
Jeanie Ward-Waller filed a claim of whistleblower retaliation against Caltrans for her firing. That legal claim is still pending. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.